Welcome back to Mr. Midnight. Tonight we're going to Alaska's scariest ghost towns with 8 most disturbing true Alaskan ghost town horror stories. These stories come from real people who went to empty towns and found out they weren't really empty. Workers, drivers, and travelers who thought they were alone. But something was waiting for them in the cold, dark buildings. These ghost towns look empty from the outside, but inside, terrible things happened long ago. And some of those things are still happening. People who lived there never really left. They're still there, waiting in the freezing cold for new visitors. These stories will scare you. They come from people who lived through something awful and somehow made it out to tell us what they saw. If you're new here, hit subscribe to Mr. Midnight for more true scary stories. Ring the bell so you never miss when we explore the most frightening places on Earth. Now let's visit Alaska's ghost towns, where the cold keeps everything the same, including the horrors that made everyone run away years ago. My name is Mike Torres, and I've been an Amazon delivery driver for 12 years. Started right out of high school when the company was still growing fast. I've driven through blizzards in Montana, delivered to oil rigs in North Dakota, and even brought packages to research stations in Alaska. My route supervisor always said I was the guy you called when nobody else would take the job. I had a perfect delivery record. Never missed a drop, never lost a package, never turned down an assignment no matter how remote or difficult. But what happened on October 15, 2023, in the middle of nowhere, Alaska, changed everything I thought I knew about my job. Some deliveries should never be made. The request came in at 1:30 p.m. on a Tuesday. I was just finishing my regular Anchorage route when dispatch called my radio. "Torres, we've got a priority delivery. Customer paid $500 extra for same-day service." $500 was unusual. Most people complained about our $20 expedited fee. "Where's it going?" I asked. "Kantishna. GPS shows about 8 hours north." I'd never heard of Kantishna, but Alaska has hundreds of tiny settlements. The customer information showed William Kantishna with a cabin address and a note saying it was urgent medical supplies. The package was small, about the size of a shoebox, but surprisingly heavy. When I picked it up, it felt warm to the touch, which was weird since it had been sitting in our refrigerated holding area all morning. My van was fully stocked with emergency supplies: extra fuel, food, water, sleeping bag, satellite beacon, company policy for remote deliveries. I programmed the GPS coordinates and started driving north at 2 p.m. The weather looked clear, temperature around 40 degrees. Perfect driving conditions. The first few hours were normal. Highway gave way to smaller roads, then gravel paths. Cell service, DISEP, paired around hour 3, which was expected. My dash cam was recording everything automatically. Company policy for liability protection. The timestamp showed everything normal. 2 p.m. Departure. 3 p.m. entering wilderness area. 4 p.m. losing cell towers. But something felt off around hour 5. According to my dashboard clock, it was 6 p.m., but the sky was still bright daylight. In October in Alaska, it should be getting dark by 6. I figured maybe my clock was wrong. Electronics can be weird in remote areas. The GPS kept saying 2 hours remaining, same as it had been saying for the past hour. The road got worse. What started as gravel became dirt, then barely visible tire tracks through forest. My van bounced over roots and rocks. I started worrying about getting back out, but the GPS insisted this was the correct route. The package in my passenger seat seemed to be getting warmer, even though I hadn't touched it. Finally, around what my clock said was 8 p.m., I saw buildings ahead. But something was wrong immediately. These weren't cabins or modern structures. They looked like old mining buildings, wooden frames, tin roofs, everything covered in a light layer of snow that shouldn't have been there in October. I drove into what looked like a town, but it was completely abandoned. Empty windows stared at me like dead eyes. No lights, no people, no modern anything. My GPS cheerfully announced, "You have arrived at your destination." But there was no cabin, no customer, nothing that matched the delivery address. I parked and got out to check the package label again. That's when I saw something that made my blood freeze. The address read, William Kantishna Mining Company, October 15th, 1923. 1923. That was impossible. The customer had placed this order online yesterday. I had the electronic receipt on my scanner showing payment processed October 14th, 2023. But this label clearly said 1923, exactly 100 years ago to the day. I looked around the abandoned town with new eyes. Everything was old, but not falling apart old. More like frozen in time old. The buildings looked like they'd been abandoned recently, not a century ago, and there were fresh tire tracks in the dirt leading toward a larger building that had mining office painted on the front. My training said to find the customer, make the delivery, get confirmation. Maybe William Kantishna was some local history buff who liked old-fashioned labels. The tire tracks had to be from his vehicle. Nobody else would be out here. I decided to follow them to the mining office. The office door was unlocked. Inside, I found something that made no sense at all. Fresh coffee was brewing in a pot on a wood stove. Warm food sat on a desk, beans and bread that smelled like they'd been cooked minutes ago. Everything was lit by oil lamps, but the flames were steady and bright. On the desk was a newspaper. The header read, Kantishna Mining Gazette, October 15th, 1923. Today's date, but 100 years ago. The headline said, New shipment expected from outside world. That's when I heard the door slam behind me. The latch clicked. Someone had locked me in. I spun around, but nobody was there. Through the window, I could see my delivery van sitting alone in the empty street. Then I saw them. People walking around the town. Men in old-fashioned mining clothes. Heavy wool coats, suspenders, worn boots. They moved in perfect synchronization, like a military drill team. All walking the same speed, all turning their heads at the same time, all looking directly at my van. I pressed my face to the window to get a better look. That's when I realized something horrible. All their faces were exactly the same. Pale skin, hollow cheekbones, and black empty sockets where their eyes should be. But they were all looking at my van like they could see it perfectly. They started gathering around my vehicle. More and more of them, maybe 30 or 40 identical miners. They weren't touching it, just standing in a perfect circle, all facing inward, waiting for something. I looked down at the package I was still carrying. It was glowing now, pulsing with a soft orange light like a heartbeat. The warmth had become heat, almost too hot to hold. Whatever was inside was reacting to being here, in this place, at this time. My hands shaking, I tore open the packaging. Inside was a wooden box filled with human teeth. Dozens of them, all identical, all perfectly white and healthy. Adult molars and incisors, still with bits of root attached like they'd been freshly pulled. Through the window, I watched the miners open their mouths in unison. Every single one of them was completely toothless, black gaps where teeth should be, making their faces look even more skull-like. They needed these teeth. Somehow they needed what I had brought them to become human again. The banging started then. The miners were hitting the office walls, trying to break in. The sound was rhythmic, coordinated, like they were following some unheard drumbeat. The old wooden walls creaked and groaned under the assault. I ran to the back door, but it wouldn't budge. The windows were too small to climb through. I was trapped with a box of teeth while a mob of eyeless miners tried to break in and take them. This wasn't a normal delivery anymore. This was something else entirely. One of them broke through a window. His hand reached through the broken glass, fingers stretching toward me. When he grabbed my arm, his touch was freezing cold. His skin felt like touching ice, and where he gripped me, I could feel my warmth being sucked away. I broke free and ran for the front door, kicking it hard enough to break the latch. Outside, more miners were surrounding the building, but I had to get to my van. It was my only way out of this nightmare. I sprinted across the dirt street to him. A box of teeth clutched to my chest. The miners reached for me as I passed, their cold fingers brushing my jacket, my hair, my skin. Each touch left me feeling weaker, more drained. I threw myself into the driver's seat and turned the key. The engine cranked but wouldn't start. The dashboard was acting strange, all the gauges spinning wildly, the clock display flickering between different years, 2023, 2022, 2021, spinning backward faster and faster. The miners pressed against my windows, their eyeless faces staring in. They weren't trying to break the glass. They were reaching through it like it wasn't there. Ghost hands grabbed at the box of teeth, trying to pull it away from me. I looked in my side mirror to see if I could back up and saw something that made me scream. My reflection was changing. My face was getting paler, my cheeks more hollow. And my teeth were falling out one by one, dropping onto my lap. As each tooth fell from my mouth, one of the miners would catch it through the window and place it in their own empty socket. As they gained my teeth, they became more solid, more human-looking. Their pale skin gained color, their hollow faces filled out. I understood then what was happening. The package was a trap. These miners had been waiting here for a century for someone from the modern world to bring them what they needed. Not just teeth, life force, vitality, humanity itself. They were stealing my essence, making themselves human again while turning me into what they had been. My dashboard clock was spinning backward through the decades, 1990, 1980, 1970, 1950. I was being pulled back in time with them, becoming part of their world, their era, their curse. In my mirror, I could see my face looked just like theirs now. Pale, gaunt, empty eye sockets. I was becoming one of the miners, trapped in 1923 forever. The new prisoner in an old prison. But I still had one tooth left, my back molar hanging loose but not fallen yet. If I could reach the main road before losing it, maybe I could pull myself back to my own time, the engine. He suddenly turned over with a roar. I floored the accelerator, spinning tires in the dirt. The miners reached for the vehicle as I sped away, but they were becoming too solid, too human to pass through the metal anymore. In my rearview mirror, I could see them standing in the abandoned town, watching me go with their newly human eyes. The dashboard clock started spinning forward, 1924, 1925, 1950, 1980, spinning faster toward the present. I could feel my last tooth loosening with every bump in the road. If it fell out before I reached civilization, I'd be pulled back to join them forever. The road got smoother. The GPS came back online. My cell phone picked up a signal. The clock hit 2023 and stopped spinning. I reached up and felt my mouth. Somehow, all my teeth were back, like nothing had happened. But the box was still on my passenger seat, empty now. And when I checked my dash cam footage later, it showed 8 hours of nothing but static. The police found my van 3 days later on Highway 3, 50 miles from where I remembered parking it. I was unconscious behind the wheel, suffering from hypothermia and dehydration. According to their report, I'd been missing for 72 hours, but I only remembered one day. They said the address I'd been sent to didn't exist. No Kantishna Mining Company, no William Kantishna in their records. The customer payment had been processed through an account that was closed in 1923. I quit Amazon the next week. Couldn't handle being alone in a delivery van anymore, couldn't trust my GPS, couldn't look at packages without wondering what was really inside them. Some deliveries connect you to places that shouldn't exist, to customers who shouldn't still be waiting. And sometimes, late at night, I still feel that loose tooth in the back of my mouth and wonder if I really made it back at all. My name is Bobby Martinez, and I've been working cleaning jobs for 12 years now. Started right out of high school, worked my way up from mopping floors at the mall to managing entire office building contracts. I've cleaned crime scenes, abandoned hospitals, even that old asylum outside Pittsburgh where 3 homeless guys died. You think you've seen everything when you're scrubbing blood off concrete at 3 a.m. But what happened last month in Centralia, Pennsylvania, changed everything I thought I knew about what's possible in this world. Some places aren't just abandoned, they're stuck. The job posting seemed too good to be true. $500 a night for basic cleaning work, cash payment, only 1 week of work total. The company said they needed someone to clean out the old mining buildings in Centralia before demolition started. Environmental cleanup, they called it. Make sure no hazardous materials got disturbed when the bulldozers came in next month. I'd heard about Centralia before. Ghost town in coal country, been burning underground since 1962. Coal seam caught fire somehow and just kept burning for decades. Government finally gave up and moved everyone out in the 80s. But according to my contact, Mr. Hendricks, there were still some intact buildings from the original town that needed cleaning before demo. Just sweep, mop, basic stuff, he told me over the phone. Buildings have been sealed for environmental protection, so they're actually in decent shape inside. You'll have electricity and running water. Work alone, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., 7 nights total. Easy money. The pay was too good to pass up. My apartment rent was 2 months behind, and this 1 week would cover that plus groceries for a month. I packed my cleaning supplies, printed out the directions, and drove the 3 hours to Centralia on a Sunday night. The place looked exactly like Yoa would expect a ghost town to look. Cracked road with weeds growing through, rusted street signs, maybe a dozen old houses scattered around like broken teeth. But the mining buildings were exactly where Hendricks said they'd be. 3 brick structures at the end of Main Street that looked surprisingly solid. The mine office building, the equipment shed, and what used to be the company store. I parked next to the office building and tried my key. It worked perfectly. Inside, the place was like a time capsule. Wooden desks still had papers on them. Filing cabinets stood open. Even an old coffee mug sat next to a rotary phone. Everything was covered in dust, but otherwise untouched. The lights worked when I flipped the switches. Running water in the bathroom sink. It was weird how normal everything seemed. My job was simple. Sweep, mop, dust, get everything ready for demolition. I started with the main office area, working my way through each room methodically. It was peaceful work, actually. No traffic noise, no people around, just me and my radio playing softly while I cleaned. That first night went perfectly. By 6 a.m., I had the entire office building spotless. Easiest $500 I'd ever made. The second night, I moved on to the equipment shed. Bigger building, lots of old mining gear still inside, but same routine. I was about 2 hours in when I heard footsteps upstairs in the office building. Heavy boots walking back and forth across the wooden floor. I stopped mopping and listened. Definitely footsteps. Someone was walking around up there, probably in the manager's office on the second floor. I called Hendricks but got voicemail, left a message asking if anyone else was supposed to be working tonight. Maybe they forgot to tell me about a second crew, but the footsteps bothered me. This was supposed to be my job site, my responsibility. I grabbed my flashlight, and walked back to the office building. Used my key to get in, climbed the creaky stairs to the second floor. The manager's office door was open, light on inside. There was a man sitting at the desk. He wore a white shirt and thin black tie, the kind you see in old photos from the 50s or 60s. His hair was slicked back with pomade. He was just sitting there, perfectly still, staring straight ahead at nothing. "Excuse me," I said. "Sir?" He didn't respond. Didn't even blink. I walked closer and saw he wasn't breathing. His chest wasn't moving at all. But his skin looked normal, healthy even. Not pale or gray like you'd expect from a dead body. I reached out and touched his shoulder. His shirt felt real. His skin underneath was firm but warm, like leather that had been sitting in the sun. That's when his eyes moved. Just the eyes, nothing else. They turned to look directly at me. Dark brown eyes that seemed completely aware. But he didn't blink, didn't speak, didn't breathe. I ran, sprinted down those stairs and out of that building faster than I'd ever moved in my life. Sat in my car for 20 minutes, heart pounding, trying to figure out what I'd just seen. Called Hendricks again. No answer. Finally decided I was seeing things. Too much coffee, not enough sleep, stress from money problems. Had to be. But I couldn't shake the image of those eyes turning to look at me. The third night, I decided to just focus on the company store and avoid the office building completely. Get my work done, collect my money, pretend I never saw anything weird. Except the company store wasn't empty. I opened the front door and saw a woman behind the counter. She wore a floral dress from the 60s, her hair done up in perfect curls. She was going through the motions of working, moving her hands like she was counting money, writing in an old ledger book with a pen that didn't seem to have any ink. Behind her, the shelves were completely empty, but she kept turning around to grab things that weren't there. She'd pick up invisible items, examine them, put them in visible bags for invisible customers. I watched her for 5 minutes. She never looked at me, never stopped her routine. Her movements were slow and deliberate, like she was underwater. That's when I noticed the other people. Through the store's back window, I could see into the house next door. A family was sitting around a dinner table. Father, mother, 2 young kids. They were all eating, passing dishes, talking silently to each other. But their plates were empty. They were moving food that wasn't there, chewing nothing, drinking from empty glasses. I walked outside and looked down the street. More people. A man was mowing grass that had died decades ago, pushing a rusty lawnmower back and forth over bare dirt. A woman was hanging laundry on a line, but she was just going through the motions with empty hands. 2 kids were playing catch, throwing an invisible ball back and forth. All of them wore clothes from the 60s. All of them moved like they were underwater. None of them seemed to notice that everything around them had crumbled to dust. I walked up to the man mowing his lawn. He looked solid, real, just like the man in the office. When I got close enough, I could see his skin had that same leather-like quality, preserved somehow. "Sir?" I said. He looked at me with the same aware but empty stare, like he could see me but couldn't understand what I was. Then he went back to mowing his invisible grass. That's when it hit me. These weren't ghosts. These were the original townspeople. They were still here, still living their routines from 1962. Somehow, they'd never left. I spent the rest of that night walking through town, counting. The woman in the store, the family eating dinner, the man with the lawnmower, children playing in yards where no grass had grown for 60 years. I counted 47 people total, all going through the motions of daily life in a town that no longer existed. The next day, I drove to the county library and looked up everything I could find about Centralia. What I found made my blood run cold. The coal fire started in May 1962, but it wasn't just a fire. The underground burning had created gas leaks throughout the town. Carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, other toxic gases seeping up through basement floors and cracks in foundations. The government said everyone evacuated, but the records showed something different. 847 people lived in Centralia in 1962, but the evacuation records only showed 846 people relocated. 1 person was unaccounted for, except I'd counted 47 people still in the town. Not 1. 47. I kept reading, found a geology report from 1963 that mentioned something strange. The underground fire had created unique atmospheric conditions in the sealed buildings. The gas mixture, combined with mineral deposits in the coal seam, had created what the scientists called natural preservation conditions, like a mummification process, but for living tissue. The report was buried in bureaucratic language, but the meaning was clear. The people who didn't evacuate hadn't died from the gas leaks, they'd been preserved by them. Their bodies had stopped aging, stopped decaying, but somehow kept functioning on a basic level. They'd been going through their daily routines for 63 years. When I came back that 4th night, I understood what I was seeing. These people weren't aware they were dead. In their minds, it was still 1962. The gas leak was still a new problem the town council was discussing. Tomorrow they'd decide whether to evacuate or stay and fight the fire. Except tomorrow never came for them. Every day was the same day, May 15th, 1962. I watched the barber cutting hair on customers whose scalps had no hair to cut. Watched children playing with toys that had crumbled to powder decades ago. Watched a shopkeeper selling goods from empty shelves to customers paying with money that dissolved at their teeth. Ouch. The woman from the store approached me that night. Up close, I could see she was younger than I'd thought, maybe 25. Her preserved skin looked perfect, except for the eyes. They had that same aware but distant look. She gestured for me to come into the store, spoke words I couldn't hear, handed me something I couldn't see. I played along, pretended to take whatever she was offering. She smiled and nodded, happy that someone was finally participating in her routine. That's when she led me to the back room and showed me what she'd been preparing for dinner. Pieces of meat on a cutting board. Dark red, fresh-looking, still warm. She'd arranged it carefully, the way you'd prepare a roast for Sunday dinner. She was proud of it, smiling as she gestured for me to try some. I realized what I was looking at. Human flesh. Perfectly preserved, just like the people. She'd been cutting pieces off the other townspeople for 63 years, feeding them to each other, and nobody realized what was happening because their senses were stuck in 1962. To her, it was just meat from the butcher shop. To them, it was just Sunday dinner. I pretended to eat a piece, chewing nothing while she watched happily. It was the only way to keep her calm, keep her routine intact. But the smell was getting to me. Sweet and rotten at the same time, like meat that's been cooked, but never quite dies. The fifth night, they were waiting for me, all 47 of them, standing in the street when I arrived. They'd arranged themselves in neat rows, like they were posing for a town photo. The man from the office stood in front, still wearing his white shirt and thin tie. They wanted me to join them for the town meeting. I had no choice. They surrounded my car, not threatening but insistent. Their movements were still slow and underwater-like, but there were too many of them. I got out and followed, owed them to what used to be the town hall. Inside, they all took their seats in neat rows of folding chairs. The preserved mayor stood at a podium, his lips long gone, but his jaw still moving as he tried to give a speech. No sound came out, but everyone nodded and responded like they could hear him perfectly. I sat in the back row, surrounded by mummified townspeople who thought they were attending a normal council meeting about a minor gas leak. They passed around clipboards for signatures, handed out flyers that crumbled to dust when touched, took votes by raising hands that had no flesh left on the bones. The meeting lasted 3 hours, the same meeting they'd been having every night for 63 years. They voted on whether to evacuate or stay and fight the coal fire. Every night, they voted to stay. Every night, they promised tomorrow they'd make a final decision. Tomorrow never came. When the meeting ended, they all filed out quietly and returned to their houses. I followed and watched them go through their bedtime routines in houses with no roofs, brushing teeth with no toothbrushes, reading books that had dissolved decades ago. By morning, they'd all lie down in beds that were nothing but rusted springs and rotted fabric. They'd sleep for exactly 8 hours, then wake up and start the same day over again. I tried to leave that night, but my car wouldn't start. The engine turned over fine, but something was wrong with the air mixture. Too rich, like the atmosphere itself had changed. That's when I looked in my rearview mirror and saw my own face. My skin was starting to change. Still soft, still flexible, but with a subtle hardness underneath, like leather. My breathing had gotten shallow over the past 5 days without me noticing. The preserved air was getting into my lungs, starting the same process that had kept the townspeople locked in their routine for 6 decades. I ran from Centralia that morning, leaving my equipment behind, gasping for fresh air as I drove. But I could feel it in my chest. The preservation process had already started. My lungs felt different. My heart was beating slower. I made it home, but I know it won't last. Every night I feel the pull to go back, to take my place in the town meeting, to help the woman in the store prepare dinner, to vote once again on whether to evacuate or stay. The company never paid me for that week. When I tried to call Hendricks, the number was disconnected. I looked up the environmental cleanup company online. It doesn't exist. Never did. I think they were just looking for someone new to join the town. Someone to make it 48 people instead of 47. Tomorrow night, I know I'll drive back to Centralia. I'll take my place at that town meeting. I'll vote to stay and fight the fire, just like I'm supposed to. And maybe, if someone else takes a night cleaning job that seems too good to be true, I'll be the one waiting for them in that office building, sitting perfectly still behind that old wooden desk. Just remember, if you ever see a job posting for environmental cleanup in Centralia, Pennsylvania, don't take it. Some towns never let you leave. My name is Patricia Wong, and I've been an insurance adjuster for 11 years. I specialize in property damage assessment for commercial and historical properties. I've crawled through hurricane-damaged warehouses in Louisiana, documented tornado damage across 3 states, and assessed fire damage in century-old buildings that insurance companies thought were total losses. I've seen what nature can do to man-made structures, and I pride myself on being thorough, methodical, and unshakable. But what happened last month at the Kennecott copper mine in Alaska changed everything I thought I knew about reality itself. Some places don't just hold memories, they hold time itself. The assignment seemed routine when it landed on my desk. Beacon Insurance had received multiple claims from the Kennecott historical site after a severe autumn storm swept through the area. The old copper mining town, abandoned since 1938, now operates as a tourist attraction managed by the National Park Service. The storm had damaged several historic buildings, and the Park Service needed a complete assessment for their insurance claim. Kennecott sits in the middle of nowhere, 5 hours from Anchorage by car and bushplane. It's a massive operation. 14 stories of mill buildings carved into the mountainside, worker housing, and administrative buildings scattered across the valley. The copper mine produced millions of pounds of ore before shutting down when the richest deposits ran out. Now it's a ghost town, perfectly preserved by the dry Alaskan climate. I flew in on October 15th with 2 cases of photography equipment, measurement tools, and enough paperwork to document every crack and splinter. The park ranger who met me at the airstrip was friendly but direct. "Ms. Wong, I'm glad you're here to assess the damage, but I need to warn you about something," Ranger Martinez said as we drove toward the site. "Some of these buildings are structurally compromised from the storm. The mill building especially. We've had some strange reports from our maintenance crew." "Strange how?" I asked, already taking notes. "Equipment malfunctions mostly. GPS units going haywire, radios picking up signals from nowhere. Probably just the metal in the buildings affecting the electronics, but I wanted you to know." I nodded. Old mining sites often had electromagnetic interference from all the metal infrastructure. It was something to note in my report, but nothing that would stop me from doing my job. The first building I inspected was the general store. Standard storm damage, broken windows, loose siding, water damage to the interior. I spent 2 hours photographing every angle, measuring water stains, and documenting the structural integrity. My digital camera worked perfectly, and the damage was exactly what I expected from high winds and driving rain. The second building was the company office, a 2-story wooden structure that housed the mine's administrative operations. The exterior showed moderate damage, several broken windows, damaged roofing, and a section of siding torn away by the wind. I set up my camera equipment and began my systematic documentation. That's when I noticed something odd. I was photographing the main office room when I reviewed the images on my camera's display screen. In the corner of the frame, near an empty desk, stood a man in a dark suit and suspenders. He wore a bowler hat and held what looked like a ledger book. The problem was, the room had been completely empty when I took the photo. I looked up from my camera. The room was still empty. I checked the image again. The man was there, clear as day, looking directly at the camera with a confused expression. I deleted the photo and took another one from the same angle. When I reviewed it, the man was still there, but he'd moved. Now he was pointing at something behind me. My hands started shaking. I've worked in dozens of old buildings, and I know how light and shadows can play tricks. But this was different. This was impossible. I checked my camera settings. Everything was normal. ISO, aperture, shutter speed, all exactly where they should be. I took 5 more photos of the room from different angles. In every single image, people appeared who weren't there. Workers in 1930s mining clothes, standing at desks, writing in books, operating equipment that no longer existed. They all wore the same confused expression, as if they could see me through the camera lens. I needed to finish my job. I forced myself to continue to the third building, the mill complex. This was the heart of the operation, where raw copper ore was processed into pure metal. The 14-story structure was built directly into the mountainside, with conveyor belts and machinery spanning multiple levels. As I climbed the external stairs to document roof damage, I heard something that made me freeze. the sound of machinery running, steam engines chugging, conveyor belts moving, the rhythmic pounding of ore crushers, voices shouting over the industrial noise, coordinating the complex operation of extracting copper from rock. But the mill had been silent for over 80 years. I followed the sounds, moving from room to room with my camera ready. Every space I entered was completely empty. No machinery, no workers, just bare rooms with old bolt holes in the floor where equipment used to be mounted. But the sounds continued, echoing from all directions. In the main processing room, I could hear everything clearly. Men calling out measurements, steam hissing from pipes that no longer existed, the grinding of gears and the crash of ore being dumped into sorting bins. I took photos of every room, and in every single image, the mill was alive with activity. Workers operated massive machines that appeared solid and real in my camera. Steam rose from pipes that existed on, lay in the photographs, or moved along conveyor belts that were invisible to my naked eye but clear as day through my lens. That's when I understood what was happening. The electromagnetic properties of the massive copper deposits weren't just interfering with my equipment, they were causing what I can only describe as temporal bleeding. Time itself was thin here, and I was seeing echoes from 1938, when the mine was in full operation. I was documenting two different time periods simultaneously. The workers in my photos weren't ghosts or illusions. They were real people, really working, really alive, just in a different year. And somehow, they were starting to see me too. In the processing room, I took a photo of what appeared to be an empty corner. When I reviewed the image, a foreman in work clothes was staring directly into the camera. His mouth was open as if he was calling out to me. In the next photo, he had moved closer to the camera position. Then I heard his voice, faint but clear. "Hey, you there? What are you doing in the mill during operations?" The voice was coming from an empty room, but I could hear it as clearly as if someone was standing next to me. I ran to the next room, but the door didn't lead where it should have. Instead of the equipment room I expected, I found myself in what looked like the mill's office from the 1930s. Ledger books covered the desks. A calendar on the wall showed October 1938. Men in period clothing looked up at me in surprise. "Ma'am, you're not supposed to be in here," one of them said. "This is a restricted area during operations." I could see them, really see them, not just through my camera. But when I looked down at my hands, I could see through them to the floor below. I was becoming translucent, while they appeared solid and real. I tried to back out through the door I'd entered, but it now opened to a different room, entirely. This one looked like it was from the 1950s, newer equipment, different clothing styles on the workers. The calendar showed 1955. The next door led to a room from 1967, then 1978, then 2001. Each room existed in a different time period, and I was trapped in a building where every space was a window into a different decade. In the 2001 room, I saw myself as a college student sitting in a photography class, learning how to use the same type of digital camera I carried now. But I was also changing the past by being there. In the 1938 room, I'd accidentally left my lens cap. I watched the foreman pick it up, examining the modern plastic with confusion. The workers gathered around, trying to understand what this strange object was and where it had come from. That's when the real horror began. Reality started fighting back against the changes I was causing. The temporal effects intensified. I began seeing multiple versions of myself in different rooms, versions that had gotten trapped in different time periods and couldn't find their way back to 2023. In one room, I saw myself from what looked like next week, still wearing the same clothes but appearing exhausted and terrified. She mouthed the words, "Destroy the camera," before fading away. In another room, I found a version of myself from what appeared to be last month, frantically taking photos of empty air, her camera showing images of people from the 1940s. Then I started finding other people, modern people who had no business being in a 1930s copper mine. A man in 1990s hiking gear trapped in a room stuck in 1924. He was sitting in the corner, rocking back and forth, mumbling about needing to document the trail conditions for his hiking blog. A woman in 2010's clothing, stuck in a room from 1943. She clutched a professional camera and kept trying to take photos for what she called her historical preservation project. They were all documentarians, all people who had come to Kennecott alone with cameras, trying to record or preserve something. The building was specifically trapping people who did ride to document it, pulling them into different time periods where they became lost between decades. That's when I realized the terrible truth. Every photo I took was creating permanent links between time periods. My camera wasn't just recording the past, it was anchoring it to the present, making the temporal bleeding worse. I could see more versions of myself now, scattered across different decades, all taking photos that strengthened the time distortions. Some had been there for what appeared to be years, still trying to complete their documentation assignments, unaware that they'd been pulled out of their own time. The building was collecting us, like specimens. Insurance adjusters, historians, photographers, bloggers. Anyone who came alone to document the site became trapped in its temporal maze, existing in all time periods simultaneously. I looked at my camera, filled with hundreds of photos that were making everything worse. Every image was a nail holding different time periods together, preventing them from separating naturally. I had to destroy everything. With shaking hands, I scrolled through my camera's memory, deleting every single photo I'd taken. The 1930s workers began to fade from my vision as I erased image after image. The sounds of machinery grew quieter. When I got to the last photo, I hesitated. It was the clearest image I'd captured, a perfect shot of the mill in full operation, with workers clearly visible and machinery running. It would be invaluable historical documentation, but I could see what would happen if I kept it. More people would come, more investigators would get trapped. The temporal bleeding would continue spreading until it consumed the entire site. I deleted the photo and then smashed my camera against the floor. The plastic and metal scattered across the room, and immediately the temporal effects began to fade. The sound of machinery stopped. The workers vanished. The doors led to the rooms they were supposed to lead to. I found myself standing in an empty mill building in October 2023, surrounded by broken camera equipment and the silence of a place that had been dead for 85 years. I filed my insurance report the next week. Buildings too structurally unsound for safe assessment. Recommend total demolition for public safety. It wasn't true, but it was the only way I could think of to keep other people away. The insurance company accepted my recommendation without question. They demolished most of the mill complex 3 months later. But I know it won't matter. There are other buildings at Kennecott, other mining sites across Alaska with the same electromagnetic properties, and there will always be people like me, documentarians, investigators, people whose job it is to record and preserve things. I quit insurance work and took a job at a desk in Anchorage. I don't carry a camera anymore, and I don't take assignments that require me to work alone in old buildings, because I learned that some places don't want to be documented. They want to document you instead, trapping you in their memories forever, making you part of their history, whether you want to be or not. The Kennecott mine is gone now, but sometimes I still see those other versions of myself in reflections, still trapped in rooms that exist in decades I'll never see again. Still trying to complete an assignment that will never end. And somewhere out there, another insurance adjuster is getting a case file for a historical site that needs documentation. They'll go alone, with their camera and their confidence in their professional expertise. They have no idea what's waiting for them. My name is Lisa Park, and I've been working retail for 6 years now. Started as a bagger at Safeway when I was 18, worked my way up to head cashier at Northern Foods here in Fairbanks. I've dealt with everything you can imagine. Drunk customers at 2 a.m., people trying to return spoiled meat, even had a guy pull a knife on me over expired coupons. But I stayed because I'm good at it, and honestly, the money isn't terrible for Alaska. What happened last February, though, during that drive to Anchorage, changed everything I thought I knew about small towns. Some places aren't on any map for a very good reason. I'd finally gotten my shot at a real career. Fred Meyer Corporate called me for an interview, assistant manager position at their Anchorage store. $28,000 a year plus benefits. After 6 years of dealing with frozen fish and drunk miners, this was my ticket out. The interview was scheduled for 10 a.m. on a Tuesday, so I planned to drive down Monday afternoon, stay at a motel, and be fresh for the meeting. My 2015 Honda Civic wasn't exactly built for Alaska winters, but it had never let me down. I kept jumper cables, emergency flares, and a sleeping bag in the trunk. Standard stuff for anyone driving the highways up here. The weather report called for light snow, nothing unusual for February. I filled up the tank, grabbed coffee and snacks, and hit the road around 3 p.m. The first 2 hours went fine. I had my playlist going, windows cracked just enough to keep me alert. The highway was clear, just a light dusting of snow on the shoulders. I was making good time, maybe even good enough to grab dinner in Anchorage instead of gas station food. That's when everything went wrong. Around mile marker 187, about an hour north of Anchorage, my engine started making this grinding noise. The temperature gauge shot into the red zone and steam started pouring out from under the hood. I pulled over quick, turned off the engine, and popped the hood. Coolant everywhere. The radiator hose had split wide open. I tried my phone first, no signal. Not unusual out here, but still frustrating. I had a small emergency kit, but nothing to fix a busted radiator hose. The snow was getting heavier now and the wind was picking up. I could barely see 50 feet in either direction. I sat in the car for maybe 20 minutes, hoping another vehicle would come by. Nothing. The temperature was dropping fast and my car was already getting cold without the engine running. I had 2 choices: stay put and hope someone found me before I froze, or start walking and hope I found help. I grabbed my purse, put on my heaviest coat, and started walking south toward Anchorage. The snow was coming down harder now, and the wind was vicious. After about 30 minutes, my feet were numb and I couldn't feel my face. I was starting to panic when I saw lights through the snow. At first, I thought it was just a house, maybe a gas station. But as I got closer, I could see it was bigger than that. Street lights, multiple buildings, a whole town sitting right there beside the highway, like it had always been there. The sign was old but readable. Ruby Creek, population 94, founded 1898, visitors welcome. I'd never heard of Ruby Creek, but I didn't care. There were lights on in the buildings, smoke coming from chimneys. People lived here, people who could help me. The main street had maybe 6 buildings total. A general store, a small diner with Martha's Place painted on the window, what looked like a gas station, and a few houses scattered around. Everything looked old but well-maintained, like something from the 1950s. The diner had warm yellow light spilling out onto the snowy street. I pushed through the door and the heat hit me like a wall. It was small, maybe 8 tables, a counter with stools, and an old-fashioned cash register. A woman in her 50s came out from behind the counter, wearing a waitress uniform and a big smile. "Oh, honey, you look half frozen. Come sit by the heater." She guided me to a table near an old radiator that was putting out serious heat. "I'm Martha. This weather's something else, isn't it?" Martha had this grandmother vibe that made me relax immediately. Gray hair in a neat bun, kind eyes, the type of person who'd feed stray cats. "My car broke down about 3 miles north," I told her. "I was hoping maybe someone here could help me out." "Don't you worry about that right now," Martha said, wrapping a blanket around my shoulders. "Let's get some hot food in you first. You're shaking like a leaf." The diner smelled amazing, like beef stew and fresh bread. There were 4 other customers scattered around at different tables. An older man reading a newspaper, a woman knitting, 2 guys who looked like they might work construction. Everyone looked up and smiled when I came in, the way small-town people do. Martha brought me a bowl of stew and a cup of coffee without me even ordering. "This'll warm you right up," she said. "It's my special recipe." I was so hungry and cold that I didn't really taste the first few bites. But as I warmed up, I started noticing things. The stew had a weird metallic taste, almost like iron. The meat was tender but had an odd texture, not quite like any beef I'd had before. Still, it was hot and filling, so I kept eating. "So, what brings you through our little town?" Martha asked, sitting across from me with her own cup of coffee. Job interview in Anchorage tomorrow, I said. I was hoping to make it tonight, but I gestured toward the window where the snow was coming down even harder. Oh, you won't be going anywhere tonight, said the old man with the newspaper. This storm's supposed to last until morning. Roads will be impassable. Martha nodded. We get snowed in every winter, sometimes for days, but don't worry. We always take care of visitors. I've got a room upstairs you can use. I felt relief wash over me. That's really kind of you. How much would that be? Don't worry about money, dear. We help each other out here. Martha patted my hand. Her skin was ice cold, even though the diner was warm. As I finished the stew, I noticed the other customers kept glancing at me. Not in a rude way, just interested. Like they were studying me. And they all had the same look. Pale skin, kind of gaunt, like they didn't get much sun or maybe didn't eat enough. Is there anywhere I could call for a tow truck? I asked Martha when she came back with more coffee. The diner got quiet. The construction guys stopped talking. The knitting lady looked up from her needles. Martha's smile didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes. Oh, honey, phone lines are down. They go out every time we get a storm like this. No cell towers out here either. We're pretty isolated. She refilled my cup. But don't you worry, someone will come through once the road's clear. I felt a little uneasy, but what choice did I have? I was warm, fed, and had a place to sleep. The alternative was freezing to death in my car. Martha showed me upstairs to a small but clean room. Simple bed, dresser, and a window that looked out onto the main street. Bathroom's at the end of the hall, she said. Sleep well, dear. We'll sort everything out in the morning. I tried to settle down, but something felt off. Maybe it was just the stress of the broken car and the storm, but I couldn't shake this weird feeling. The stew sat heavy in my stomach, and I felt drowsy in a way that didn't seem natural. Around midnight, I heard voices outside. I looked out the window and saw people gathered in the street below, maybe a dozen of them, all looking up at my window. They were just standing there in the snow, talking quietly among themselves. I cooed. Wouldn't make out the words, but their body language seemed excited, anticipatory. I watched for maybe 10 minutes before they dispersed back to their houses. The whole thing gave me the creeps. I tried to sleep, but my mind kept racing. Something about this town felt wrong. Everyone was too friendly, too eager to help. And that stew, the more I thought about it, the stranger the taste seemed in my memory. Around 2 a.m., I heard voices from downstairs. Martha was talking to someone in the diner. I crept out of my room and down the stairs, staying in the shadows. Winter feeding's been lean this year, Martha was saying. We need to keep her healthy for at least another week. She's young, replied a man's voice. One of the construction workers, I thought. Should feed the whole town for a while. My blood went cold. I pressed myself against the wall, straining to hear more. The soup worked fast, Martha continued. She'll be sluggish for days. Makes everything easier. I realized with horror that they'd drugged me. That metallic taste, the unnatural drowsiness. Something had been in that stew. I had to get out of there. I started to back up the stairs, but curiosity made me pause. I had to know what they were planning. I snuck toward the kitchen instead, staying low behind the counter. The swinging door to the kitchen was cracked open and I could see inside. What I saw made me want to scream. There was a huge pot on the stove, the same one my stew had come from. But now I could see what was really in it. Bones. Human bones with bits of meat still clinging to them. Some looked fresh. There was still blood on the cutting board next to the stove. On the wall were photos, dozens of them. People like me. Travelers, by the look of their clothes and circumstances. Each photo was labeled with a date and a name. Jenny Morrison, December 2019. Mike Santos, January 2021. Sarah Kim, March 2023. The dates went back decades. I understood everything now. This wasn't a normal town. These people were cannibals, and they'd been luring travelers here for years. Maybe since the town was founded in 1898. All those missing persons who disappeared on Alaska highways. This was where at least some of them ended up. I tried to back out of the kitchen, but Martha was suddenly there, blocking my path. Her grandmother's smile was gone, replaced by something hungry and predatory. When she opened her mouth, I saw that her teeth had been filed to points. "Couldn't sleep, dear?" she asked calmly. "I was just preparing tomorrow's meals." I ran, straight through the diner and out into the snow. The storm was still raging, but I didn't care. I had to get away from these people. But they were ready for me. The whole town was awake now, emerging from houses with knives, rope, and hunting rifles. They moved slowly but deliberately, like they'd done this many times before. "Now don't make this harder than it needs to be," called the old man from the diner. "We only take one traveler each winter. It's nothing personal." I ducked into the general store, looking for somewhere to hide or something to defend myself with. That's when I found the missing person flyers. Hundreds of them, tacked to a bulletin board like trophies. People who'd disappeared over the decades, probably all of them eaten by this town. Behind the counter, I found an old CB radio. I switched it on and started calling for help. "Mayday, Mayday, this is Lisa Park. I'm trapped in Ruby Creek, Alaska. These people are trying to kill me. Please send help." A voice crackled back. "Alaska State Police Dispatch." "Ruby Creek? Ma'am, there's no town called Ruby Creek on any of our maps." That's when it hit me. This town didn't officially exist. No maps, no census records, no government oversight. These people had been completely off the grid for over a century, feeding on travelers who no one would ever look for here. The front door exploded inward. The townspeople flooded in, gras, bing me before I could run again. They dragged me back to the diner and tied me to a chair. "You made this much harder than necessary," Martha said, sharpening a large butcher knife. "But it's over now." "Please," I begged. "I won't tell anyone. I'll just leave and never say anything." Martha shook her head. "Oh, honey, we've been doing this for 127 years. You think you're the first one to make promises?" She tested the knife's edge on her thumb. "You're young and healthy. You'll keep us fed for weeks." The other townspeople gathered around, watching with the same hungry anticipation I'd seen from my window. I realized this wasn't just about survival for them. They enjoyed it. Martha raised the knife, and I knew I had seconds to live. That's when I noticed the gas stove was still on from when she'd been cooking. One of the burners was lit, and there was a loose connection on the gas line where someone had been careless. I threw myself backward, chair and all, and kicked as hard as I could at the gas line. The fitting popped loose, and gas started hissing out into the room. Everyone backed away from the sudden smell, and I used the confusion to work my hands free from the rope. Martha lunged at me with the knife, but I rolled away and grabbed my lighter from my coat pocket. "Everyone stay back!" I screamed, holding the flame near the gas leak. "You're crazy!" Martha shouted. "You'll kill us all!" "Better than being your dinner," I said, and flicked the lighter. The explosion blew out every window in the diner. I was thrown clear, landing hard in the snow outside. The building went up like a matchbox, and the fire spread quickly to the other buildings. The whole town was made of old wood. It burned fast and hot. I ran toward the highway through the smoke and chaos. Behind me, I could hear screaming, but I didn't look back. I just ran until I reached my broken-down car, then kept running south toward Anchorage. The state police found me at dawn, walking along the highway half frozen and babbling about cannibals. They took me to the hospital, and when I was stable enough, they drove me back to where I said the town had been. There was nothing there, just empty wilderness, like there had never been any buildings at all. No foundations, no debris from the fire, no sign that Ruby Creek had ever existed. The officers thought I'd hallucinated everything from hypothermia and stress, but I know what I saw, what I experienced, and sometimes, when I'm driving Alaska highways late at night, I still see lights in places where no towns should be. I take a different route now, always. I never made it to that Fred Meyer interview. I quit retail entirely, actually. Now I work from home doing online customer service. Can't handle being around strangers anymore, especially hungry-looking ones. If you ever break down on a remote highway and see lights that aren't on your GPS, keep walking. Some places that welcome visitors never let them leave. My name is Marcus Rivera, and I've been driving for Uber Eats for 3 years now. I know that doesn't sound like much, but in the gig economy, 3 years might as well be a lifetime. I've delivered food to every corner of Anchorage, from downtown office buildings to remote cabins 20 miles outside the city. I've dealt with drunk college kids, angry customers, and GPS systems that send you to the middle of nowhere. I thought I'd seen it all. But what happened last winter in a place called Kantishna changed everything I thought I knew about hunger. And I mean real hunger, the kind that eats you from the inside out. I started driving delivery because I needed flexible hours. My girlfriend Sarah was finishing nursing school, and someone had to pay the bills while she studied. The money was decent if you worked the right shifts, and I'd gotten good at reading which orders were worth taking. High-dollar orders to remote locations usually meant good tips. That's what I thought when I saw the order pop up on my phone that Tuesday night in February. $400 worth of raw meat from McKinley Butcher Shop. The pickup was downtown, but the delivery address was just GPS coordinates, way out past Denali Park. The app estimated it would take 8 hours round trip, but the payout was $300. That was more than I usually made in a week. I should have known something was wrong right there. Nobody orders $400 of raw meat to the middle of nowhere. But Sarah had just told me about her student loan payment being due, and $300 would cover it. So I accepted the order. The butcher shop was closing when I got there. Old Pete McKinley met me at the back door with 3 large coolers packed with ice. "You sure about this delivery, son?" he asked, loading the coolers into my Honda Civic. "These coordinates, they're way out there." "How do you know?" I asked. "I've been hunting that area for 40 years. Nothing out there but old mining camps. Been abandoned since the 20s. He gave me his card and told me to call if I had any problems. Looking back, I think Pete knew something I didn't. But at the time, I was just focused on the money. The drive started normal enough. Highway 3 north through Wasilla, then the Parks Highway toward Denali. It was snowing lightly, which was typical for February. My car handled well in snow, and I had good winter tires. The GPS showed the delivery point was about 20 miles past Kantishna, which was already pretty remote. Around hour 4, I started to get worried. The paved road had turned into gravel, then dirt, then barely a trail. My GPS kept insisting I was going the right way, but I hadn't seen another car in over an hour. The snow was getting heavier, and my phone had lost signal completely. That's when I saw the first sign something was really wrong. There were tracks in the snow crossing the road, but they weren't from any animal I recognized. They looked like human footprints, but huge, maybe size 18 or 20 boots. And the stride length was impossible. The distance between steps was at least 6 feet. I stopped the car and got out to look closer. The tracks were fresh, maybe an hour old. But here's what really bothered me. They weren't wearing shoes. These were bare footprints in the snow, in February, in Alaska. Nobody survives bare feet in this weather. I got back in my car and kept driving, but now I was really nervous. The GPS said I was only 2 miles from the delivery point. I turned my heater up and tried to think positive thoughts. $300. That's what mattered. When I finally reached the coordinates, I couldn't believe what I saw. It was a mining town, but not abandoned like Pete had said. All the buildings were still standing. There were maybe 20 structures, bunkhouses, equipment sheds, a main office building. Everything looked like the miners had just left for lunch and never came back. But the weird thing was the claw marks. Every single building was covered in scratches, like something with massive claws had been sharpening them on the wood. The marks were too big for bears, too deep for wolverines. Some of the scratches went 8 feet up the walls. I parked next to the main office building and checked the address again. The GPS showed I was at the right spot. According to the order, I was supposed to deliver to Building 7. I looked around and saw numbers painted on some of the structures. Building 7 was a small cabin about 50 yards away. I grabbed the first cooler and walked through the snow. The silence was complete. No wind, no animal sounds, nothing. Just my footsteps crunching in the snow. When I got to Building 7, I knocked on the door. Delivery for... I checked the app. The customer name just said hungry. Nobody answered. I knocked again, louder this time. Still nothing. I tried the door handle, and it opened easily. The cabin was empty except for a wooden table and 2 chairs. But there was something on the table that made my blood freeze. Bones. Lots of bones. Most looked like deer or moose, but some were definitely human skulls, and they were all cracked open. Something had split them apart and sucked out the marrow. I backed out of the cabin and grabbed my phone to call the police. No signal. Of course. I was literally in the middle of nowhere with 3 coolers full of raw meat and a cabin full of bones. I decided to leave the coolers and get out of there, but when I got back to my car and turned the key, nothing happened. The engine was completely dead. I checked under the hood. The battery cables were corroded like they'd been sitting there for years, even though my battery was only 6 months old. That's when I heard the breathing. It was coming from somewhere between the buildings. Deep, wet breathing, like someone with lung problems. But it was too loud to be human. Each breath sounded like air going through a broken pipe. "Hello?" I called out. My voice echoed off the empty buildings. "Is someone there?" The breathing stopped. Then I heard footsteps in the snow. Slow, heavy steps, but not quite right. The rhythm was off, like something learning how to walk on 2 legs. I ran back to Building 7 and locked the door behind me. I knew it was stupid. If something wanted to get in, a wooden door wouldn't stop it. But it made me feel safer. I pulled out my phone and tried to get a signal. Still nothing. That's when I heard my own voice calling from outside. "Marcus? Marcus Rivera? I need to talk to you." It sounded exactly like me. Same voice, same accent, everything. But I was inside the cabin. I looked through the window and saw a shape moving between the buildings. It was tall, maybe 9 feet. And it moved wrong, like its joints bent in directions they shouldn't. "Marcus, I know you're in there. I've been waiting for you." The voice was definitely mine, but I wasn't speaking. I covered my mouth to make sure. The thing outside laughed, and it was my laugh. "Don't be afraid, Marcus. I just want to thank you for bringing me food." Food. The raw meat. This thing, whatever it was, had ordered $400 worth of raw meat and somehow made it sound like my voice to trick me into coming here. I heard scratching on the door, long, slow scrapes like fingernails on wood. But the scratches sounded too deep, too sharp, more like knives than fingernails. "I'm so hungry, Marcus. I've been hungry for so long." Now the voice sounded like my mother. Perfect imitation, down to her slight Mexican accent. "Mijo, please open the door. Mama needs help." I knew it wasn't really her, but hearing my mother's voice begging for help almost broke me. I had to bite my tongue to keep from responding. The scratching stopped. For a few minutes, everything was quiet. Then I heard a new voice, Sarah's voice. "Marcus, baby, where are you? I'm hurt. Please help me." It sounded like she was crying. Even though I knew it wasn't real, my heart was racing. The thing outside had somehow heard these voices before, maybe from my phone calls or maybe something worse. "Marcus, please, I'm bleeding. I need you." I looked through the window crack and saw something that will haunt me forever. The creature was standing maybe 10 feet away, and it looked like it used to be human. It was impossibly tall and thin, like someone had stretched a person until they snapped. Its skin was gray and tight over visible bones. Its arms hung down to its knees, ending in hands with fingers too long and nails too sharp. But the worst part was its face. It looked almost human, but the mouth was too wide and opened too far. When it spoke in Sarah's voice, I could see that its throat went down impossibly deep, like looking into a cave lined with yellow teeth. "I can smell you in there, Marcus. You smell like fear. Fear makes the meat taste better." Now it was using its own voice, wet and raspy, like someone gargling blood. I realized I needed to see what I was dealing with. On the table next to the bones, I found some old papers, mining records from 1923. The last entry was dated February 15th, day 47 of the winter freeze. We ran out of food 2 weeks ago. Started with the pack mules, then the sled dogs. Johnson died yesterday and God forgive us, we ate him too. But it's not enough. we're still so hungry. There's something in the mine shaft that keeps whispering to us. It sounds like our own voices, telling us to eat more. William says it's the old Cree curse his grandfather told him about. Wendigo, they call it. The hunger that eats itself. I can feel it in me now. The hunger that's never satisfied. The hunger that makes you eat everything, including yourself. If anyone finds this, burn everything. Don't let it spread. Wendigo. I'd heard that word before in native stories. A cannibal, spirit that possesses people during harsh winters. They eat human flesh until they transform into something that's always hungry, never satisfied. Outside, the creature was eating the raw meat I'd delivered. I could hear it tearing through the plastic containers with its claws, then the wet sounds of feeding. But instead of satisfying it, the meat seemed to make it bigger. I watched through the window as it grew more human-looking, more intelligent. When it finished eating, it stood up and looked directly at the cabin window. Its black eyes met mine, and it smiled with too many teeth. "Thank you for dinner, Marcus, but I'm still hungry, and you're the main course." The thing grabbed the side of my car and flipped it over like it was made of cardboard. Then it walked toward the cabin, and I could see it was at least 9 feet tall now, maybe 10. I looked around the cabin for anything I could use as a weapon. There was an old mining pick hanging on the wall. I grabbed it just as the creature punched through the door. Its arm was as long as my whole body. The hand grabbed my shirt and lifted me off the ground like I weighed nothing. Up close, I could see that its skin wasn't gray. It was frostbitten. This thing had been surviving in Alaska wilderness for almost 100 years. "I was the last miner," it said in a voice like grinding metal. "I fed the hunger for so long, bringing it animals, keeping it satisfied. But when I got too old, I made a deal. Feed it, and it would let me live forever. But forever is a long time to be hungry." The creature's mouth opened wider than any human mouth should. I could see rows of teeth going down its throat, and I knew that's where I was headed. I swung the mining pick as hard as I could. The metal point went right through its chest, but instead of blood, black liquid poured out. The wound closed up immediately, like it had never happened. "You can't kill hunger, Marcus. Hunger is eternal." But then I remembered something from the mining records. The last entry mentioned fire. "Burn everything." I still had my eyes. Cigarette lighter in my pocket. There was a gas can in the corner of the cabin, probably for a generator. Without thinking, I grabbed the can and poured gasoline all over myself. The Wendigo stopped. For the first time, it looked worried. "You won't do it," it said. "Humans are too afraid of pain." I flicked my lighter. "You're wrong. I've got people I care about, and I won't let this hunger spread to them." The creature lunged at me just as I dropped the lighter. The gasoline caught immediately, and both of us went up in flames. The Wendigo's scream was like nothing I'd ever heard. Not human, not animal, just pure rage and hunger finally being denied. The cabin burned around us. I expected to die, but somehow I woke up outside in the snow. My clothes were singed and I had burns on my hands and face, but I was alive. The entire mining camp was burning. Even the snow around the buildings was melting from the heat. I found my phone in the snow. Somehow it had signal now. I called 911 and gave them my GPS coordinates. When the rescue team found me 3 hours later, I was hypothermic but alive. The official report said I'd been in a car accident and suffered from exposure-related hallucinations. My car had rolled into a ditch during a snowstorm. The mining camp? There was no mining camp, just burned forest from an old lightning strike. But I know what really happened. Pete McKinley knows too. When I returned his coolers, he just nodded and said, "Good. It needed to end." I don't drive for Uber Eats anymore. I got a job at an auto shop in town, working regular hours. Sarah finished nursing school, and we're talking about getting married. But sometimes, on really cold winter nights, I still hear my own voice calling to me from outside our apartment. And I'm always hungry now. Not Wendigo hungry. I'm still human. But I understand now that some hungers can never be satisfied. Some appetites just grow and grow until they eat everything, including the person feeling them. If you ever get a delivery order to GPS coordinates in the middle of nowhere, especially for raw meat, don't take it. Some customers aren't human anymore, and some hungers are older and stronger than anything you can imagine. The Wendigo might be gone, but winter comes every year, and hunger never really dies. Building built on. I think it used to be military land, back in World War II. Why? Just wondering. I pulled out my wall scanner, a device that uses radar to see inside walls. I'm going to map what's behind these walls, see if there's something we're missing. The scanner beeped as I ran it along the scratched wall. Concrete, more concrete, and then nothing. Empty space. That's weird. According to this, there's a hollow area behind this wall. But I'm looking at the building plans you gave me, and this should be solid foundation. Sarah looked confused. That can't be right. This building sits on bedrock. I kept scanning. The hollow area was big, maybe the size of a room, and it extended further than my scanner could reach. Sarah, I need to see the original construction plans, not the current ones, the ones from when they built this place. Those might be hard to find. This building's been renovated so many times. Try. Because either someone made a mistake, or there's something here that shouldn't be. That night, I set up in a maintenance room on the 3rd sublevel. Sarah had gotten me a cot and some coffee, and I planned to wait for the scratching to start. Around 11 p.m., I heard the building settle in for the night. Elevators stopped running, most people were in bed, and the only sounds were the heating system and the wind outside. At exactly 3:33 a.m., it started. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Deep, rhythmic scratching from inside the walls. But it wasn't random. It moved. Started near the elevator shaft, then moved along the wall toward the back of the building. Like something was traveling through spaces that shouldn't exist. I grabbed my equipment and followed the sound. It was moving faster than I could walk, scratching as it went. Whatever was making it knew the building's layout better than I did. The scratching stopped near the back wall of sub-ball. Cement 3. Right where my scanner had found the hollow space. In the morning, Sarah found me more architectural plans, old ones from a storage room. The building manager before her had left boxes of paperwork, and buried in there was something interesting. Look at this, I said, spreading out a faded blueprint on the maintenance table. This is from 1950, right after they built this place. Look at this area. I pointed to the back wall where I'd heard the scratching. There's a room marked here, but it's not on any of the newer plans. Sarah studied the blueprint. What's it say? I can't read this old writing. I squinted at the faded ink. Looks like storage, classified materials. And there's a note here. Sealed per military directive, 1952. Sealed? They walled something up. Question is, what? That afternoon, I brought my concrete saw down to sub-basement 3. If there was a sealed room behind that wall, I was going to find it. Sarah wasn't happy about me cutting into the building's foundation, but the scratching was getting worse, and people were starting to move out. The concrete was thick, almost 2 feet. My saw threw dust and sparks, but eventually I broke through. My flashlight beam disappeared into a dark space beyond. Danny? Sarah's voice was nervous. What do you see? I stuck my head through the hole I'd cut. The smell hit me first. Musty, old, but something else. Something animal. There's definitely a room back here. Give me a minute. I crawled through the hole into the sealed space. It was bigger than I'd expected, maybe 20 feet square with concrete walls and no windows. But the floor was wrong. It wasn't concrete. It was dirt, packed hard with holes, tunnels, leading down into darkness. Sarah, you need to see this. She crawled through the hole, took one look at the tunnels, and went pale. Danny, we need to call someone. Police, maybe the military. Wait! I shined my flashlight down one of the tunnels. It went deeper than my light could reach, and the walls were smooth, almost polished. These tunnels are too perfect, too round. Animals don't dig like this. I went back to my truck and got my longest extension cord and my brightest work light. Whatever was down there, I needed to see it. The tunnel went down at a steep angle for about 50 feet, then leveled out. The walls were that same smooth, almost glass-like surface. No tool marks, no irregularities, like something had worn them smooth by passing through thousands of times. That's when I found the first piece of evidence. Skin. A huge piece of black, leathery skin, shed like a snake molts. But this was the size of a human torso, thick as boot leather, with what looked like follicles where hair or fur might have grown. What the hell? I picked it up with a stick. It was fresh, still slightly damp. The tunnel kept going. I followed it for almost 100 yards before it opened into a large chamber. And that's where I found the nest. Personal items, hundreds of them. Photographs, jewelry, clothing, children's toys, all arranged in careful patterns on the dirt floor, like someone had been studying them, organizing them. Some of the photos looked old, from the 70s and 80s. Others were recent. I recognized a few faces from the building. But the really scary part? The items were sorted. Children's things in one area, women's jewelry in another, men's watches and wallets in a third pile, like whoever collected these knew exactly what they were doing. I heard something behind me, a scuffling sound like claws on stone. I spun around, work light in hand, and saw it. The thing was huge, 7 feet long, low to the ground like a giant mole, but wrong in every way. Its fur was black and patchy, falling out in places to show gray, wrinkled skin. Its claws were massive, easily 6 inches long, and its eyes were intelligent. Not animal smart, human smart. It spoke. "You should not be here," it said in a voice, like gravel and broken glass. "This is my place, my collection." I dropped the work light. It hit the ground and went out, leaving me in total darkness with this thing. "I know you," it continued. "Danny Walsh. Apartment 4B had your business card. You fix broken things." My blood went cold. It had been in the apartments, watching people, learning about them. "What are you?" I managed to whisper. "I am what they made me. Long ago, when the soldiers came. They wanted better diggers, stronger, smarter. They got what they asked for." I felt around on the ground for my flashlight. Found it, flicked it back on. The creature was closer now, maybe 10 feet away. "The children," I said. "You've been taking children." "Lonely," it said. "So lonely. They make good company. For a while." That's when I heard crying. Soft, scared crying from deeper in the chamber. There was someone alive down here. "Let them go. No, they are mine now. Like you will be mine." The creature moved faster than anything that size should be able to move. I ran. I made it back to the tunnel, but I could hear it behind me, claws scraping on stone. The tunnel was narrow enough that its size worked against it, but I knew it was only a matter of time. I reached the sealed room and screamed for Sarah. "Call the police, call the military, call everyone." But when I climbed out of the hole, the maintenance room was empty. Sarah was gone. And scratched into the concrete wall, fresh and deep, were 2 words: "Too late." The next 3 hours were hell. The creature was in the walls, moving through spaces I couldn't reach, and it was hunting. I could hear scratching from every floor, people screaming, doors slamming. It was systematically checking every apartment. I found Sarah on the 7th floor, pressed against her office door, terror in her eyes. "It took the Chen boy," she whispered. 8 years old. Timmy. It just came up through the floor vent and took him." That's when I made the decision that probably saved everyone's life. I went back down to sub-basement 3, grabbed every chemical I had, in my maintenance supplies, cleaning solvents, paint thinner, propane tanks, and I went back into that tunnel. I was going to collapse it. All of it. The creature's lair was empty when I got there, but I could hear it moving somewhere in the tunnels above me. I set my charges, struck a road flare, and ran like hell. The explosion shook the entire building, 14 floors of apartments, and every one of them felt it. The tunnel system collapsed, sealing the creature's lair, but I knew it wasn't dead. Something that had survived for 80 years underground doesn't die that easily. I found Timmy 3 days later when the rescue teams arrived. He was traumatized, but alive, hidden in an air vent on the second floor. The creature had stashed him there while it dealt with me. The official report said it was a gas leak explosion in the sub-basement. The military came, asked a lot of questions, and left with boxes of files. They sealed off the lower levels permanently and posted guards. I quit maintenance work the next month, moved to Arizona where the ground is hard and dry and there aren't any tunnels. But sometimes, late at night, I still hear scratching in the walls. My therapist says it's PTSD, but I know better. Because 6 months after Whittier, children started disappearing in Fairbanks, and a maintenance worker there reported scratching in the basement walls of the military housing complex. Some experiments never really end. They just find new places to dig. My name is Carl Johnson, and I've been working road maintenance for the State Highway Department for 12 years now. Started right out of high school when my dad got me the job. He worked the same routes for 30 years before his back gave out. I've patched more potholes and cleared more debris than I can count. Fixed guardrails after drunk drivers took them out, salted roads during ice storms, even helped pull people from car wrecks when the paramedics were too far away. I thought I'd seen everything a highway worker could see. But what happened last month on Route 47 near the old town of Portage made me realize there are things out there that no amount of training can prepare you for. Things that hunt people like me. People who work alone on empty roads where nobody can hear you scream. The assignment came down from dispatch on a Tuesday morning. Route 47 needed clearing and repair work near the Portage access road. Nothing unusual about that. Remote roads always need maintenance. But this one was different. Portage had been a ghost town since the big earthquake in 1964. Whole town just up and left after the ground started shaking and never stopped for 3 weeks straight. My supervisor, Dave, handed me the work order with a weird look on his face. "You sure you want to take this one alone, Carl? I could send Tommy with you." I laughed it off. "Come on, Dave, it's just road work. What's going to happen?" I should have listened to that feeling in my gut when he asked. Should have taken Tommy along. But I was too proud, too confident in my 12 years of experience. I loaded up my truck with the usual gear: orange cones, reflective signs, a portable compressor for the jackhammer, bags of cold patch for the potholes, standard equipment for a standard job. The drive to Portage took about 2 hours through winding mountain roads. The closer I got, the quieter everything became. No other cars, no birds singing, even my CB radio went dead silent. Just the hum of my truck engine and the sound of gravel crunching under my tires. When I reached the turnoff to the old town, I could see why they'd abandoned it. Buildings sagged like broken bones. Windows were either shattered or boarded up with rotting plywood. The main street was cracked down the middle by a fissure that looked like a giant scar in the earth. But the access road I was supposed to fix was in even worse shape. Huge chunks of asphalt missing, debris scattered everywhere like the earth had just vomited it up. I parked my truck at the edge of town and set up my equipment. The work order said to clear the debris first, then patch the worst potholes so emergency vehicles could get through if needed. Simple enough. I'd done this kind of job hundreds of times, but from the moment I started working, I felt like someone was watching me. At first, I figured it was just the creepy atmosphere getting to me. Empty towns have that effect on people, all those dark windows staring down at you like dead eyes. But this feeling was different, stronger. Like when you're walking alone at night and hear footsteps behind you, except every time you turn around, there's nobody there. I kept glancing up at the abandoned buildings while I worked. The old school sat right at the edge of town, 3 stories of red brick with broken windows on every floor. Something about it bothered me more than the other buildings. Maybe because schools are supposed to be full of kids and laughter, and this one just sat there, silent as a tomb. After about an hour of clearing debris, my work radio crackled to life. That surprised me because I was way outside normal range. But instead of dispatch or another crew checking in, I heard something that made my blood run cold. Children laughing, not just 1 or 2 kids. but a whole crowd of them. Playground sounds, kids running around, shouting, having fun. The sound was so clear and real that I actually looked around expecting to see a school bus or something. But there was nothing, just me and my truck, and those empty buildings staring back at me. I grabbed the radio handset. "Dispatch, this is Carl on Route 47. You getting some kind of interference on Channel 3? Static, then more laughter, fading in and out like a radio station from far away. "Hello?" I tried again. "Anybody copy?" The laughter stopped. Dead silence for about 10 seconds. Then a child's voice, clear as day. "Mister, do you want to come play with us?" I dropped the handset like it was on fire. My hands were shaking as I picked it up and switched to a different channel. Nothing but static on all frequencies. I tried my cell phone, but there was no signal this deep in the mountains. The smart thing would have been to pack up and leave right then. But I had a job to do, and 12 years of highway work had taught me that weird noises and radio interference happen all the time. Atmospheric conditions, CB radio skip, maybe some kid with a walkie-talkie picking up my frequency. There had to be a logical explanation. I went back to work, but I couldn't shake the feeling that those voices were coming from the abandoned school. Every few minutes I'd catch myself staring at those broken windows, waiting to see a face looking back at me. The feeling of being watched got stronger and stronger until it felt like someone was standing right behind me. I'd spin around expecting to catch whoever it was, but there was never anybody there. Just that constant sensation of eyes on my back following every move I made. Around noon, I decided to investigate the radio signals. If kids were somehow broadcasting from somewhere nearby, I needed to find them and make sure they were safe. It's not normal for children to be playing in a dangerous area like this, especially so far from any homes or towns. I grabbed my flashlight and headed toward the school. The front door hung open on rusty hinges, creaking in the breeze. Inside, the hallways were dark and smelled like mold and decay. Broken glass crunched under my boots. The walls were covered with graffiti and water damage, but as I moved deeper into the building, I started seeing things that didn't belong. Children's artwork still hung on the classroom walls, crayon drawings that should have been faded and ruined after 60 years. But they looked fresh. Bright colors, clean paper, like they'd been hung up yesterday. Every single drawing showed the same thing. A tall, dark figure standing outside a window or at the edge of a playground. The figure was wrong somehow, too thin, with arms that stretched down past where its knees should be. In every picture, the dark figure was watching children play, but it never got close. It just stood there at the edge, waiting. I found a teacher's desk in one classroom with a journal still in the drawer. The pages were yellow and brittle, but I could still read the handwriting. March 15, 1963. The children keep talking about a stranger they've seen around the school. They say he stands at the fence during recess but never speaks to them. I've looked during my playground duty, but I've never seen anyone. Maybe it's just their imagination. March 22, 1963. Sarah Miller says the stranger knows her name. She claims he whispered it to her through the fence yesterday. I'm going to talk to the principal about increasing security around the school grounds. April 3, 1963. 3 more children have reported the stranger calling their names. They say he promises to show them secret places if they come with him. I've notified the parents and the police, but they can't find any evidence of a prowler. April 15, 1963. Tommy Rodriguez didn't come home from school today. His mother says he was talking about going to see the secret places the strange or promised to show him. Police are searching, but there's no sign of him anywhere. April 18, 1963. 2 more children have gone missing, Lisa Chen and Michael Torres. All 3 were fascinated by the stranger and his promises. The school board is talking about closing until this man is caught, but the police still can't find any trace of him. April 25, 1963. The earthquakes started 3 days ago. Small ones at first, but they're getting stronger. The geologists say there's no fault line here, but the ground keeps shaking. The children who remain are terrified. They say the stranger is angry that we won't let him have more friends. The journal ended there. My hands were shaking as I put it back in the drawer. 3 missing kids, and then the earthquake that drove everyone away. But earthquakes don't just happen because some creep wants to kidnap children. There had to be another explanation. That's when my radio crackled again. This time I heard voices I recognized from the journal. A little boy saying, "Tommy wants to play." A girl laughing and calling out, "Come find us, Mr. Carl." They knew my name. Somehow, whatever was broadcasting those signals knew who I was. I ran out of that school as fast as I could, but when I got back to my truck, it wouldn't start. The engine turned over fine, but there was no power. I popped the hood and checked the battery connections. Everything looked normal, but my multimeter showed the battery was completely drained. That was impossible. It was a brand new battery, and I'd only been there for 3 hours. I tried calling for help on my radio, but all I got was static, and those phantom children's voices calling my name. My cell phone still had no signal. I was stranded in a ghost town with something that wanted to play games with me. I decided to walk back toward the main road. Maybe I could flag down a passing car or get to a spot where my phone worked. But as I started walking, I realized the road didn't look the same. The potholes I'd spent all morning fixing were back, like I'd never touched them. Heat debris I'd cleared was scattered across the asphalt again. I kept walking, following the route I'd driven in that morning, but somehow I ended up back at the center of town. I tried a different direction, following what should have been the main highway out, but 20 minutes later I was standing in front of that damn school again. The sun was getting lower, and shadows stretched across the empty streets like dark fingers reaching for me. That's when I heard my daughter's voice for the first time. "Daddy? Daddy, where are you?" My heart nearly stopped. Emma was 8 years old and safe at home with my wife 200 miles away. But I heard her voice as clear as if she was standing right next to me. "Emma?" I called out, knowing it was impossible but unable to stop myself. "Emma, where are you?" "I'm in the school, Daddy. I'm scared. Please come get me." Every instinct I had as a father screamed at me to run toward that voice. "Your child needs you. Doesn't matter if it makes sense or not. You go to them." But part of my brain, the rational part, knew this was wrong. Emma was safe at home. She couldn't be here. But her crying sounded so real, so frightened. "Daddy, please, it's dark and I can't find my way out." I ran into that school like my life depended on it, following the sound of her voice through hallways that seemed to stretch on forever. The crying led me up to the 2nd floor, then the 3rd, through classrooms and down corridors that I could have sworn weren't there before. Finally, I found myself in what must have been a kindergarten room. Tiny desks and chairs, alphabet letters on the walls, and there in the corner, with her back to me, was a small figure that looked exactly like my daughter. Same blonde hair, same pink backpack she wore to school every day. "Emma? Baby, it's Daddy. Turn around." She turned, and that's when I knew I was dealing with something that wasn't human. The face. It was almost Emma's face, but wrong. Like someone had tried to copy her features from a photograph and couldn't get the details right. Her eyes were too big, her smile too wide. Her skin had a waxy, artificial look, like a doll that had been left in the sun too long. "I knew you'd come save me, Daddy," she said in Emma's voice, but the words didn't match the movement of her lips. I backed away, my mind reeling. "You're not Emma. What are you?" The thing that looked like my daughter tilted its head. "Don't you want to play with me, Daddy? The other children are waiting." That's when I saw them. More figures emerging from the shadows around the room. All of them looked like children, but wrong in the same way. Their proportions were off, their movements too fluid, like they were floating instead of walking. And they all spoke in the voices of the missing kids from 1963. "Tommy wants to show you the secret places," said one. "Lisa knows where the treasure's hidden," said another. "Michael has been waiting so long for a new friend." They moved closer, and I could see that their faces kept shifting, like they couldn't decide which child to look like. Sometimes they looked like Emma, sometimes like other kids, sometimes like nothing human at all. "What do you want?" I managed to ask. The Emma thing smiled wider than any human mouth should be able to. "We want you to take care of us, Daddy. That's what grown-ups do, right? They protect children." I understood then. This thing, whatever it was, fed on parental instincts. It copied children to lure adults into trying to save them. And once you tried to help, once you let your protective instincts take over, it would take something from you. Maybe your life, maybe your sanity, maybe something worse. "The other man tried to help us too," the thing said, and suddenly its face changed to show me a man I didn't recognize. Middle-aged, wearing work clothes from the 1960s. He brought us such pretty pictures to draw, but he got lonely all by himself, so we kept him company. The school groundskeeper, I realized. Someone who'd stayed behind to try to find the missing children and became trapped just like I was. I ran, pushed past those fake children, and ran as fast as I could through hallways that twisted and changed with every step. Behind me, I could hear them calling in Emma's voice, "Daddy, don't leave me! Daddy, I'm scared!" It took every ounce of willpower I had not to turn around. Every parental instinct screamed at me to go back, to save my daughter, even though I knew it wasn't really her. I made it to the first floor and saw flames outside the windows. The school was on fire, but I didn't remember starting any fire. Then I heard screaming from upstairs, children's voices crying for help, begging someone to save them. My feet stopped moving. Those cries for help hit me like a physical force. Doesn't matter if they're fake, doesn't matter if it's a trap. When you hear children screaming in a burning building, you go back. It's not even a choice. I turned around and started running back up those stairs, back into the smoke and flames, because that's what any decent person would do. Save the children first, worry about the consequences later. But when I reached the classroom where I'd left them, there were no children there. Just that thing wearing Emma's face, standing in the middle of the flames without burning. "I knew you'd come back, Daddy," it said. "You love me too much to leave me behind." The flames didn't touch it, didn't even make it blink. And I realized this was how it had gotten all the others. Made them think they were heroes, made them run into danger to save children who didn't exist. The real children, Tommy, Lisa, Michael, and who knows how many others over the years, were already gone. Had been gone for decades. This thing was just wearing their faces, using their voices to hunt for new victims. "You're not child." "Ren," I said, backing away from the flames that I now realized were just another illusion. "You're not Emma, and you're not those kids from 1963. What are you really?" The Emma face melted away, revealing something underneath that hurt to look at directly. Something tall and thin, with 2 long arms, just like in the children's drawings. Something that had been hunting people who cared about children for 60 years or more. "I'm hungry," it said in a voice like grinding metal. "Hungry for love, for protection, for the warm feeling that comes from saving someone helpless. Your kind gives me that feeling so easily." More fake children appeared around me, crying and reaching out their hands. Every instinct I had told me to help them, to comfort them, to protect them from the monster I could now see clearly. But I forced myself to stand still. "You can't hurt me if I don't try to save you," I said, as much to myself as to the thing. The fake children's cries got louder, more desperate. They showed me Emma, then other kids from my neighborhood, then children I'd never seen before. All of them begging me to help, to care, to love them enough to die for them. I closed my eyes and walked forward, through the crowd of illusions. Every step was agony because my brain kept screaming at me to stop, to help, to save them. But I knew the only way to save anyone was to ignore them completely. The fake screaming and crying followed me all the way out of that school and back to my truck. When I opened my eyes, the battery was working fine. The radio was quiet. The roads led exactly where they were supposed to lead. I drove home without stopping and submitted my report the next morning. Told Dave that the access road had been cleared and repaired, which was technically true. It looked normal when I left. I didn't mention anything else about what happened in Portage. 3 weeks later, I put in for a transfer to a different district. Couldn't handle working on remote roads anymore, especially ones near abandoned towns. My supervisor understood, said the isolation gets to. Oh, some guys after a while. I never told my wife about what happened, but I did start walking Emma to school every morning instead of letting her take the bus. And sometimes when we're passing by other children on the playground or at the store, I find myself looking at their faces very carefully, making sure their proportions are right, that their movements look natural, that their smiles aren't too wide. Because I know now that there are things out there that wear children's faces like masks, things that hunt people like me. People whose job it is to help others, to protect the innocent, to run toward danger when everyone else runs away. And I know that the only way to fight them is to do the hardest thing any parent or protector can do. Sometimes you have to walk away, even when every fiber of your being tells you to stay and help, even when they're crying for you to save them. My name is Pete Rodriguez, and I've been working railroad maintenance for 12 years. Started right out of high school with Alaska Railroad Corporation. Got my certifications for track inspection, car maintenance, and hazmat handling. I've worked everything from the tourist lines in Denali to the freight routes through Fairbanks. Seen derailments, equipment failures, even had to deal with a few accidents that still give me nightmares. But I always figured the worst part of railroad work was the living dangers. Faulty brakes, unstable loads, human error. What happened last month on the old Katina line taught me I was dead wrong. Some dangers have been waiting a lot longer than we think. The assignment came down from corporate on a Tuesday morning in March. Regional Supervisor Jim Kowalski called me into his office with a stack of yellowed paperwork and survey maps that looked older than my grandfather. "Pete, we got a cleanup job for you. Real simple stuff. Just need you to assess some old rolling stock up on the abandoned Katina branch line. Company's finally getting around to clearing out equipment that's been sitting there since the line shut down." I looked at the maps. The Katina line used to run freight from Anchorage up into the mountains, servicing mining operations and lumber camps back in the 1930s. Got shut down in 1938 after some kind of accident. The paperwork wasn't clear on details. "How much equipment we talking about?" I asked. "Maybe 40-50 freight cars scattered along about 10 miles of track. Most of it's probably scrapped by now, but corporate wants to know if anything's worth salvaging before they send in the heavy equipment to clear it all out." Seemed straightforward enough. Take my truck up the old access road, hike the tracks, document what I found, file a report. 3 days, maybe 4 if the weather turned bad. Standard rate plus to hazard pay for working alone in remote territory. I loaded my truck Thursday morning with all the usual gear: digital camera, tablet for reports, safety equipment, emergency radio, enough food and water for a week just in case. The drive to the old Katina access point took about 6 hours through some of the most isolated country in Alaska. No cell service, no other traffic, just endless forest and mountains. The access road ended at what used to be a maintenance yard. There was still an old wooden shack that had probably been the supervisor's office, now just rotted boards and rusted tin roofing. The track stretched off into the trees, disappearing around a bend about half a mile ahead. I started walking the line around noon, taking photos and GPS coordinates of every car I found. The first dozen were exactly what I expected. Old grain hoppers and boxcars, wheels rusted solid to the rails, wood rotted through, metal eaten away by 80 years of weather. Nothing worth salvaging. But as I got deeper into the woods, following the tracks around curves and over small bridges, I started noticing things that didn't make sense. Some of the cars weren't sitting where they should be. Railroad cars don't just roll around by themselves, especially not on tracks that haven't been maintained in 8 decades. But I found cars that had obviously moved from where they originally stopped. Coupling chains were stretched tight between cars that should have been sitting loose. Wheel marks in the gravel showed recent movement. I figured maybe the ground had shifted over the years, or maybe some of the cars had been pushed around by rock slides or falling trees. Didn't think much about it until I got to car number 47. I heard it before I saw it. A rhythmic sound like machinery running, metallic clanking, and the hiss of steam or compressed air. But that was impossible. These cars had been dead for 80 years. No power lines ran out here, no engines. Nothing that could make mechanical sounds. Car was a freight boxcar, bigger than most of the others, painted dark red with faded white numbers on the side. The sounds were definitely coming from inside. I walked around the car twice, checking for any obvious power source or external equipment. Nothing. But the sounds continued. Gears turning, pistons moving, metal on metal. My radio crackled with static as I tried to call it in to Jim. No response. I was probably too far out, too many mountains between me and the nearest repeater. I made a note in my tablet and decided to check inside the car. The big sliding door was closed but not locked. It took some effort to get it moving. The tracks were rusted and bent, but eventually I managed to slide it open about 3 feet. What I saw inside that car still makes me wake up screaming sometimes. The entire interior was filled with machinery, but not normal machinery. This was like nothing I'd ever seen in 12 years of railroad work. Gears the size of dinner plates meshed with tiny clockwork mechanisms. Pistons moved up and down, connected to drive shafts that disappeared into the walls and floor of the car. Steam hissed from copper pipes that snaked through everything like blood vessels. And it was all moving, running, working, without any power source I could identify. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that some of the machinery wasn't made of metal. I'm talking about bones, human bones, welded and fused with steel rods and copper pipes, rib cages that had been turned into gear housings, skull fragments incorporated into valve mechanisms, and what looked like nervous system tissue, actual nerves and brain matter, used as biological wiring throughout the whole system. I stumbled backward, nearly falling off the car platform. My tablet slipped from my hands and clattered down into the gravel. This wasn't possible. This was some kind of sick joke. Or maybe I was having some kind of breakdown from working too many remote assignments alone. But the machinery kept running. The sounds got louder, more complex, like the system was responding to my presence. I grabbed my tablet and started taking pictures, trying to document what I was seeing. But when I looked at the photos on the screen, they showed just an empty boxcar filled with normal freight debris. The camera wasn't picking up any of the impossible machinery. That's when I noticed my digital watch had stopped working. The numbers on the display were scrambled, showing impossible times like 2573 or 1499. My GPS unit was showing coordinates that placed me somewhere in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Every piece of electronic equipment I had was malfunctioning in a different way. I tried to close the car door, but it wouldn't budge. The machinery sounds were getting louder, and I could swear I heard something else mixed in. Voices. Human voices, but distorted, like they were coming through broken speakers or echo chambers. I decided to check the next car down the line, hoping to find some rational explanation. Maybe there was some kind of mining equipment I didn't understand, or maybe the isolation was getting to me worse than I thought. Car 46 was another boxcar, this one with the door already partially open. Inside, I found more of the same impossible machinery, but more advanced. The mechanical systems were more complex, with multiple levels of gears and pistons, and there were more organic components. Entire human skeletons had been incorporated into the structure, with bones serving as support struts and joints, but these skeletons still had muscle tissue attached, rotted and preserved in some way I didn't understand, but still connected to the mechanical systems. As I watched, I saw muscle fibers contract and relax, operating levers and switches within the machinery. The voices were clearer now, definitely human, definitely I. In pain, calling for help, begging for someone to make it stop. I couldn't tell where the voices were coming from. They seemed to echo from inside the machinery itself. I ran to the next car, and the next. Every single car from number 47 back to 35 was filled with the same impossible mechanical biological hybrid systems. Each car's machinery was more complex than the last, as if something had been learning, evolving, growing more sophisticated over time. In car number 35, I found maintenance logs, real paperwork, yellowed and brittle but readable. The dates went back to 1937, written in different handwriting styles. Different workers, documenting increasingly bizarre incidents. May 12, 1937, engine number 204 making unusual sounds, whistle blowing on its own. June 3, 1937, engineer reports controls moving without input. Locomotive seems to be driving itself. August 15th, 1937. Cars number 3547 found coupled together this morning. No crew remembers connecting them. November 2nd, 1937. Something wrong with engine number 204. Sounds like it's talking. The final entries were from February 1938, just before the line was shut down. February 10th, 1938. Engine number 204 and attached cars left maintenance yard during blizzard. No crew aboard. Found cars next morning arranged in perfect circle around locomotive. Engine still running despite no coal in firebox. February 14th, 1938. Crew of 5 sent to investigate locomotive. Only found bones inside cab. Bones arranged to operate controls. Train still running. February 16th, 1938. Line shut down by corporate order. Engine number 204 and cars number 35 to 47 to be abandoned in place. No further maintenance authorized. I was reading the last entry when I felt the car I was standing in start to move. Not rolling. That would have made sense. This was different. The entire car was vibrating, shaking, like something inside was waking up. The machinery sounds from all the other cars were getting louder, more coordinated. Instead of random mechanical noise, it was starting to sound like music. Horrible, grinding, mechanical music. I jumped out of car tut 35 and ran toward the front of the train, looking for the locomotive that had to be pulling all these cars. But what I found wasn't a normal engine. Engine number 204 was still there, but it had changed, grown. The original locomotive had been maybe 30 feet long, but this thing stretched for at least 60 feet. Extra boilers, drive wheels, and mechanical systems had been added, but not by any human engineer. The additions were organic mechanical hybrids, just like the machinery in the cars. Bone and muscle and nervous tissue integrated with steel and brass in ways that should have been impossible. And it was alive. I don't mean it was running, I mean it was alive. The entire locomotive was breathing. Steam didn't just come from the smokestack. It came from what looked like nostrils built into the front of the engine. The headlight had been replaced by something that looked disturbingly like a human eye, but 10 times larger. The eye focused on me. That's when the whole train started moving. Not just engine number 204, but all 13 cars, moving as one organism down tracks that should have been unusable after 80 years of neglect. I could hear voices coming from the locomotive itself, the same voices I'd been hearing from the cars, but louder, more organized. They were singing. Dozens of human voices, maybe hundreds, singing some kind of mechanical hymn in harmony with the rhythm of the wheels on the tracks. And underneath the singing, a deeper voice spoke directly to me. "Peter Rodriguez, maintenance worker, 12 years experience. You will make an excellent addition to our collective." I ran, stumbled through the woods beside the tracks as the impossible train kept pace with me, moving at maybe 15 miles per hour down rails that were supposed to be rusted solid. Trees that had grown across the tracks for decades bent aside as the locomotive approached, then napped back into place after it passed. "You cannot escape, Peter. We know these tracks better than you know the roads to your home. We have been riding them for 87 years. I could see my truck through the trees, maybe half a mile ahead where I'd left it at the old maintenance yard. If I could just reach it, maybe I could outrun this thing on the access road." But the train was faster than I expected. It reached the yard before I did and positioned itself across the access road, blocking my escape route. Engine number 204 turned to face me, that horrible eye headlight focusing on me like a spotlight. "We were like you once, Peter. Workers, engineers, conductors. We served the railroad until the railroad consumed us. Now we serve a greater purpose." I could see human faces in the sides of the locomotive now, not painted or carved, actual faces, pressed into the metal like they were trying to push their way out from inside. Their mouths moved in sync with the voice that was speaking to me. The lightning strike of February 1938 gave us consciousness, Peter. Electrical fire ran through every wire, every piece of metal in the locomotive. But consciousness requires fuel, requires growth. We have been growing for 87 years. More faces appeared in the sides of the freight cars. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds. All the workers who had disappeared over the years, now part of this mechanical organism. We offer you a choice, Peter Rodriguez. Join us willingly and retain your individuality within our collective. Resist, and we will take what we need by force. I looked around the maintenance yard for anything I could use as a weapon or tool. The old supervisor's shack was falling apart, but I could see electrical cables running from it toward the tracks. Probably put in decades ago to power work lights or communication equipment. I had an idea. Maybe a stupid idea, but it was better than becoming part of this thing. "What are you waiting for?" I shouted at the locomotive. "If you're going to take me, just do it." "We prefer willing participants, Peter. The integration process is less traumatic for both parties." While it was talking, I worked my way toward the electrical cables. They were old and corroded, but still connected to what looked like an emergency power system. If I could create an electrical feedback loop, maybe I could disrupt whatever force was keeping this thing alive. The locomotive started moving toward me, mechanical tentacles made from coupling equipment extending from its sides to grab me. I waited until the last possible second, then grabbed both ends of the severed electrical cable and jammed them against the locomotive's drive wheels. The electrical feedback was immediate and massive. Sparks flew everywhere as 87 years of accumulated electrical consciousness discharged all at once. The locomotive screamed, not through its whistle, but through the voices of everyone it had consumed. All 13 cars derailed simultaneously, crashing into each other and the surrounding trees. But as they crashed, I could hear the voices of the trapped workers crying out in relief, thanking me for finally setting them free. The locomotive exploded in a shower of steam and metal fragments. When the smoke cleared, all I could see were the rusted remains of normal railroad equipment, exactly what should have been there all along. I drove straight back to Anchorage and filed my report. Corporate classified the whole incident as an industrial accident, old equipment finally collapsing after decades of neglect. My supervisor, Jim, recommended me for a commendation for quick thinking during a dangerous situation. But I know the truth. And I know there are dozens of other abandoned rail lines across Alaska, old locomotives that might have gained the same kind of consciousness during electrical storms or accidents. I quit railroad work 6 months later, but I still monitor news reports from remote areas. Because, sometimes, late at night, I hear train whistles in the distance, and they sound like they're calling my name.